Sorry,
hold on. So you mean to tell me if somebody gives you $100 million, you're not going to lean to what they want? Are you crazy? And by the way, I'm a Semite, Piers. I'm Assyrian. So don't play this whole anti-Semitic. That argument is done, and people have woken up to it. Don't play that game with me, please.
Yeah, look.
Don't go down that route.
Look,
it's undeniable the influence.
To say blame, but again, the blame the whoever, right?
Come on.
Blame Miriam Adelson.
People have been waiting for this moment for a long time, and here it is happening in real time on Piers Morgan's show, and it is even more significant than the headlines are making it out to be. This is not liberals sitting around criticizing Trump. This is not the mainstream media doing another hit piece. This is a man who got punched in the head in California for wearing a red hat, sitting across from a Trump defender and saying out loud that the movement has been hijacked, and we all know who hijacked it. Vincent Oshana was there from day one, 2016, California, red hat and everything, and he's done. Not quietly done. Loudly, specifically, on camera done. And he is not alone. Tucker Carlson is done. Megyn Kelly is done. Joe Rogan is done. The entire media infrastructure that spent a decade building the MAGA movement is developing cracks that are visible from space. Then there is Fred Fleitz sitting in the same room saying he does not care that the president attacked the first American Pope because it is just a distraction and the world is safer now. And John Fugelsang, who comes in with a Bible and a receipts folder and leaves nothing standing. And underneath all of it is a $100 million donation. A war that nobody can explain the end state of, and a question that Dan Abrams will not let anyone dodge, which is who exactly is responsible when the most powerful commander-in-chief in the world takes the country to war. This one is going to hit different. Subscribe right now and let us get into it.
This whole Iran war and his behavior surrounding him.
I agree, Piers. I was one of those people, 2016, in California, supporting him from day one. You know, I love what he did. He came and mixed up the whole system. I got punched in the head in California for wearing a red hat that wasn't even a Make America Great Again hat. So I was there with them from the beginning. But again, a lot of people, Piers, try to say, no, you guys are all MAGA, you never change your mind. I'll openly say that what's happening right now is unlike him. It's almost like he has like an evil force around him. I don't know if it's the Paula Whites, these evangelical Christians in his ear. But I love what John said, Piers, about, the sad thing is, I'm not surprised about I don't agree with it. These tweets about the Pope and Christianity, and by the way, and I'm pretty sure John knows this, Galatians 6:7 says, God will not be mocked. But I'm not surprised. He said he's not a Christian, Piers. When he got sworn in, he didn't put his hand on the Bible this time. He said on Air Force One he's not going to heaven. I just don't, it's supposed to be America first, Piers. It's supposed to be America number one, okay? And it just seems like there's outside influences, Piers, that are more about them and less about us. And it's a really, really messed up thing because, Piers, look around the corner. Midterms look like it's going to be a bloodbath. And then think about 2028 presidential, who the front runner, technically right now, is Marco Rubio. This war does not seem like it's going to end, Piers, anytime soon, period. There's no uprising. We dropped weapons off to the Kurds. The Kurds took the guns. The Kurds stole the weapons. There's no uprising. And I know I said at the beginning, Piers, this was told, it was for the people. The Iranians, after 47 years, took to the streets, and they were like, we need help. Please help us. We are done. And the president, everybody was like, we're coming to help. We're coming to help. And then all of a sudden, enriched uranium became the story again, which I think is nonsense. We took it out. And the fact that we're supposed to believe intelligence, that now their missiles can come here, I don't believe it, Piers. I think we were hijacked, and we all know who hijacked it. And Israel has its thing. By the way, Piers, I'm watching videos of they're going after Hezbollah right now in Lebanon. They're taking down full apartment complexes for what? For one terrorist? For two terrorists? Yeah. It's not good, Piers. And I just hope, I think we're at the point of no return, Piers. I don't see this thing ending anytime soon. I think it's going to hurt the Republican Party, not only in the midterms, but for the presidency as well.
So Fred Fleitz, when you hear that from somebody who, was a Trump voter, does that not give you pause for concern? And when you hear the same from so many people that were supportive of Trump, that voted for him in the last election, turning on him so rapidly in such large numbers now, does that not worry you?
I don't think they're turning on him in large numbers, but I want to add that I'm Catholic. I like Pope Leo. I don't agree with him. He's a little too liberal for me, but I expect popes to advocate for peace and against war. And I would advise the president to keep that in mind. This is what popes do. It's a good thing. But I just look at what the NATO Secretary General said.
Would you criticize Donald Trump for his attack on the Pope?
I just don't care about this. What I would focus on is that
As a Catholic,
NATO Secretary General said
as a Catholic, you don't care about the American president launching an unprecedented verbal onslaught against the first American Pope. You don't care.
It's a distraction. It's a distraction. I just don't care.
But as a Catholic,
what I care is that the NATO Secretary
I'm a
General
Catholic
says
sitting in London.
our world is safer. Our world is safer because of the U.S. and Israeli action.
Fred, no disrespect, but just to repeat, you don't care?
I think it's a distraction. I said, look, I like the Pope. He's a little too liberal for me. I expect him to speak out on war and peace. That's what popes do.
But you can still care.
He did enter the political debate, and this is the kind of thing that happens when you do that.
Your spiritual leader is described in the way that Donald Trump described him, and he's the first American Pope. Your only response is, I don't care?
Look, Trump trolls people. You know that better than anyone else.
But he's trolling your spiritual leader and mine. I care.
What I care about is that Trump is winning this war. The world is safer because an Islamist terrorist state is significantly weaker. And I think this war is going to wrap up in a couple of weeks. And I think there will be an uprising over the next few months. When the bombing stops.
Do you want to bet on that?
Yeah, let's do it. I'll come back on your show if that happens.
Okay. How much do you want to bet?
$50.
$50. That probably represents... That probably represents your confidence in winning this bet. John Fugelsang, I mean, I look, as a Catholic sitting here in London at the moment, I care. I absolutely bloody well care, because this was an unprecedented attack. And it's the first American Pope. And it's like, at the very, this is my problem with what Donald Trump does in these things. It's like when people he doesn't like die. Whether it's Colin Powell or John McCain or Rob Ryan or whoever it may be. It's like, my mother always says to me, nothing good to say about someone when they die. Say nothing. Just at least respect life and death. Say nothing.
Most men have the game to not do that. But again, we have to remember, this man can't stop lying. There is no Jesus-based argument for Trump support. There is no gospel teaching or commandment of Jesus that he has fought for on a policy level. You have to throw Jesus out. And if you think this Pope is too liberal, you're going to really hate Jesus when you get to the gospel parts of the Bible. I mean, this is a man who began his political career off a racist lie that the first black president wasn't one of us. He lied to every American you care and love about during the plague. He had cops beaten for a lie on the Capitol steps and then pardoned all those terrorists after he got in a second time. And he launched that campaign off a lie, another racist lie about Haitian migrants being illegals eating pets. You cannot believe anything he says. And again, you can't believe Netanyahu or the Ayatollahs either. If anything, this shows us that it's not the moderate and liberal religious people causing all the problems. It is the fundamentalist wings of all the world's great religions, the fundamentalist extreme right, Muslims, Christians, and Jews, who are causing the violence, oppressing the women, hating the gays, and turning millions of young people off to the concept of religion.
Dan Abrams, just very quickly.
Let me just add something there about Israel, right? We've been talking sort of broadly about Israel as if it's a monolith, right? And I think John makes a good point, which is if you look at support for Netanyahu right now in Israel, it's at about 40%, right? Yep. Similar to what Trump has here in the United States. And when we talk about Trump's actions, right, here in the United States, we separate Trump from the United States. And I think we have to do the same thing with Israel. We have to identify Netanyahu as the one who is pursuing this. It doesn't mean Israel Israel that.
I totally agree. What I would say to that, I completely agree. I've become increasingly critical of the Israeli government because I believe there are some absolute right-wing headbangers on that government. Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, the spectacle of Ben-Gvir last week, cracking champagne open in the Knesset and wearing noose lapel badges because he just celebrated a law which will only execute Palestinians if they determine a terrorist, but not Israelis who do the same. I thought it was one of the most revolting things I've seen. So I think that you can criticize the Israeli government without, as some are always keen to do, being branded anti-Semitic. It's got nothing to do with the country, actually, or nothing to do with the people, and certainly nothing to do with Jewish people. But, and it's a big but, I think I'm right in saying that although the polling on Netanyahu is at that level, the polling on Israeli support within Israel for the war is very high, very high. So Netanyahu knows that, and he also knows the longer he can keep the sort of war part of his reign, as I use that word deliberately, going, the longer
Yeah.
he avoids a criminal corruption trial.
Yep.
Right. I think that's true. All of that is true. And I will just add one other piece here, which is this sense, and this goes back to the New York Times article, et cetera, this idea that, oh, Trump got convinced into this and his team was, I mean, again, we talk about it as if Trump is like a child, right? It's like, oh, well, you know, he got convinced by Netanyahu and Netanyahu snookered him. It's like, what other president would we talk about this way? This is a decision that Donald Trump made, blaming it all on Netanyahu. Netanyahu this and Israel that. Yes. Is that a piece of it? Sure. But in the end, this is Donald Trump's decision. He's now owning it. He's the one telling us it wasn't Netanyahu who convinced him. He's the one telling us it was his decision. So I just think it's a deflection for people who say, oh, well, you know, Netanyahu or Israel or this convinced Trump of this or that. He made this decision and now he's got to live with it.
Well, talking of deflections, just very quickly, hang on, Vinny, I will give you one word, but Dan, just very quickly, I'm about to interview somebody who was an advisor to Melania Trump. She suddenly popped up out of nowhere last week to make this, again, unprecedented statement about Jeffrey Epstein. Let's take a look.
I am not Epstein's victim. Epstein did not introduce me to Donald Trump. I met my husband by chance at a New York City party in 1998. This initial encounter with my husband is documented in a detail in my book, Melania.
Dan, very quickly, before I talk to Mark Beckman, who is a current advisor to Melania Trump, what was your take on that? Why do you think she did that?
You have to believe she did that because there's some upcoming story. I mean, because if there isn't, it makes no sense, right? I mean, if she literally just got up and decided, you know what, I'm now getting tired of this and resurrects the Epstein story, it doesn't make any sense. The only thing I can think of is her office was getting calls about some bigger story that's being done about her contact with Ghislaine Maxwell and with Jeffrey Epstein, and she decided to get ahead of the story because otherwise it's inexplicable.
Yeah. Final word to you, Vinny, very quickly, because I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just really quick. I mean, like, we're not blaming Israel for everything, but if you can't admit that this all started because Israel was going, so Marco Rubio said, we have to go. Miriam Adelson is a huge Israeli sponsor. She gave him $100 million. And name one leader from another country that has visited the White House 7 times in 1 year. And when it comes to Congress, he has 100.
I'm sorry. He's not doing that. He's not blaming the Jews.
I'm not blaming.
He is not.
It's so tiresome to hear this.
Don't play that game. Please,
Yeah, it's
please
not a
don't
game.
play
It's
the blame the
outrageous.
Jews
You
game.
actually- you know
It's
what?
like,
It's
like blaming all Christians for the KKK.
You know what?
He's not blaming
not.
Jews.
Unfortunately, when somebody,
Yeah,
Fred, all due respect, Fred, but when you say blame the Jews, at no stage
Come on, dude.
has anybody blamed the Jews, right? We have specifically just made it clear that we are criticizing
Fred,
the
really.
Israeli
That's clearly what's
government.
happening.
By the way,
Miriam Adelson.
hold on.
Sorry, Fred.
Hold on. So you mean to tell me if somebody gives you $100 million, you're not going to lean to what they want? Are you crazy? And by the way, I'm a Semite, Piers. I'm Assyrian. So don't play this whole anti-Semitic. That argument is done, and people have woken up to it. Don't play that game with me, please.
Yeah, look.
Don't go down that route.
Look,
it's
you don't have to-
undeniable
you don't
the
have to say
influence.
blame, but again, the blame the whoever, right?
Come on.
Blame Miriam Adelson. Whatever Miriam Adelson is nonsense. This idea that, oh, she's the real reason, right? And I think that's sort of the point that Fred is making, putting aside whether you blame the Jews, not to blame. The reality of blaming this Miriam Adelson or these pro-Israel supporters who have access to Trump, again, the idea that it's their fault.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Right?
I agree. If you're the president, if you are the most powerful commander-in-chief in the world and the most powerful world leader, ultimately and you go to war, the buck stops with you. It is certainly true from what Rubio initially said and from the New York Times piece that Trump was put under an enormous amount of pressure by Netanyahu and the Israeli government because they painted a picture of a sequence of events that simply hasn't materialized. But ultimately, you're quite right, Dan, if you're the president of the United States, it's on you. It's on you where you take American military. I've got to leave it there. A fascinating debate.
Let us start with Vincent Oshana because his testimony in this segment is the most politically significant thing that happens in the entire 13 minutes, and it deserves to be treated with the weight it carries. This is not a man who was always skeptical of Trump. This is not a never Trumper who finally got validation. This is someone who was there before it was popular, who took a punch in the head in California for wearing a hat, who defended the movement when his own community thought he was wrong, and he is sitting on Piers Morgan's show in 2026 saying the words that the entire MAGA media apparatus has been trying to prevent its base from saying out loud: we were hijacked. And we all know who hijacked it. That sentence is a political earthquake, and it needs to be understood as one. Because when the people who built the emotional foundation of a political movement start using the word hijacked, they are not just criticizing a policy decision. They are saying the thing they believed in was real and something else replaced it without their consent. That is a fundamentally different statement than saying I disagree with this war. It is saying I was sold something and what got delivered was not what was on the label. And that feeling, that specific feeling of betrayal by something you genuinely believed in, is the most dangerous political emotion there is for an incumbent movement heading into midterms. Vinny makes three specific arguments that need to be taken seriously, and none of them got the full response they deserved in the room. First, the uprising never materialized. The entire justification for American involvement in this conflict included a promise that the Iranian people would rise up once the regime was weakened, that the 47 years of frustration would boil over into a popular revolution that would resolve the conflict from the inside. Vinny says he believed that. He says he was told that. And then the Kurds took the weapons and kept them. And the streets of Iran did not produce the revolution that was promised, and now the enriched uranium story has become the new justification, and Vinny does not believe that one either. He is right to be skeptical. The pattern of intelligence being shaped to fit a predetermined military conclusion is not a new pattern in American foreign policy. It is the pattern. It has been the pattern since at least 2003, and the American public has every right to demand a higher standard of proof before it accepts the next version of weapons of mass destruction. Second, Israel is conducting its own parallel military campaign in Lebanon, demolishing apartment complexes for individual targets, while American resources and attention are committed to Iran. Vinny asks the question directly. For what? For one terrorist. For two terrorists. And nobody in the room gives him a satisfying answer because there is not one. Third, Miriam Adelson gave $100 million to this administration, and the foreign policy that followed has aligned precisely with the interests of the Israeli government. Vinny is not saying this to be anti-Semitic. He says so explicitly. He is a Syrian. He is a Semite himself. He is making a straightforward argument about money and influence that applies to every major donor in American politics, regardless of their ethnicity or religion. If you give a politician $100 million, and then that politician makes foreign policy decisions that happen to benefit your primary political interest, the question of whether those things are connected is not a conspiracy theory. It is the most basic question of accountability in a democracy. Fred Fleitz's response to all of this is instructive in its emptiness. He says he does not care about the Pope attacks because they are a distraction. He says the world is safer. He says the war will wrap up in a couple of weeks and the uprising will happen in a few months. And then he offers to bet $50 on it. $50. On a prediction about whether a war in Iran will produce a popular revolution that overthrows a government. The confidence and the stakes of the wager are in perfect inverse proportion to each other, and Vinny Oshana calls it immediately. The Pope conversation is worth spending real time on, because Fred Fleitz's dismissal of it is actually more revealing than anything he said in defense of the administration. Trump attacked Pope Leo, the first American Pope in the history of the Catholic Church, called him an enemy, went after him on social media, in the middle of a war, while tens of millions of American Catholics are watching. And Fred Fleitz, a Catholic himself by his own admission, sat on television and said he does not care. He called it trolling. He called it a distraction. John Fugelsang's response to this is the one that should be quoted everywhere. There is no Jesus-based argument for Trump support. There is no gospel teaching or commandment of Jesus that this administration has fought for on a policy level. And if you think the Pope is too liberal, you are going to really hate Jesus when you get to the gospel parts of the Bible. That line is not just a clever observation. It is a theological indictment of the entire Christian nationalist project that has attached itself to this presidency. Because Christian nationalism does not actually derive its power from the teachings of Jesus. It derives its power from the cultural and political identity of white American Christianity. Those are completely different things, and Fugelsang is right to name the difference. Fugelsang also does something else important. He reminds the room of the full record. Trump began his political career on a racist lie about the first black president not being American. He lied to the entire country during a plague. He had police officers beaten on the Capitol steps on the basis of a lie and then pardoned the people who did it. He launched his most recent campaign on a racist lie about Haitian migrants eating pets. The Pope attack is not an aberration. It is a continuation. It is the same man doing the same thing he has always done, which is say whatever serves his immediate interest regardless of who it hurts or what it destroys. Dan Abrams makes the most legally and politically precise argument of the entire segment, and it is the one that matters most for the historical record. Stop treating Trump like a child who got convinced by Netanyahu. Stop talking about who snookered him and who got in his ear and who painted a picture of a sequence of events that never materialized. He is the President of the United States. He is the Commander-in-Chief. He has access to every intelligence apparatus in the most powerful country in the world. When he takes that country to war, the decision is his. The consequences are his. The accountability is his. He cannot spend 4 years telling the world that Donald Trump is a strong, decisive leader who trusts his own instincts, and then turn around the moment the instincts produce a disaster and say, well, Netanyahu really convinced him. Pick a lane. Either he's in charge or he's not. And if he is in charge, then he owns every coffin that comes home from this war. Piers Morgan concedes that Trump was put under enormous pressure by Netanyahu and that the sequence of events he was promised has not materialized. And then he says what Abrams said. If you are the President of the United States, it is on you. Full stop. Here is the Melania piece because it cannot be ignored, even though it lands at the end of the segment almost as a footnote. Melania Trump surfaces out of nowhere to make a public statement clarifying that Epstein did not introduce her to Donald Trump. Unprompted. Abrams says the only logical explanation is that her office was getting calls about a larger story involving her contact with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, and she decided to get ahead of it. If Abrams is right and his logic is sound, then the Epstein story is not finished. It is not buried. It is circling. And the fact that the former First Lady felt the need to preemptively address it while her husband is prosecuting a war and his base is fracturing tells you something about the state of this administration that no amount of military briefings can paper over. Here is the bottom line on everything this segment reveals. The MAGA coalition is fracturing along a very specific fault line. The people who believed in America first as a genuine governing philosophy, America's resources for American people, no more forever wars, no more bleeding the country dry for other nations' conflicts, are watching an administration that promised them exactly that delivered the opposite. And the people who were always in it for the cultural warfare and the institutional demolition are still holding on because that part of the project is still running on schedule. Vincent Oshana represents the first group, and his voice matters not because he is a celebrity or a pundit, but because he is the actual base, the guy in California with the hat, the guy who took a punch for this. And when he says hijacked and means it, and says on camera with his full name attached, that is the sound of a coalition beginning to break in ways that midterm polling will eventually confirm. Democrats need to be listening to exactly this conversation, not to mock it, not to say we told you so, but to understand that the voters who are reachable right now are people like Vinny, people who believed in something that turned out to be a brand with no product behind it, people who are not going to become progressive Democrats overnight, but who might, if offered a real alternative with real conviction behind it, decide that what they thought they were voting for and what the Democratic Party is actually offering are closer together than they realized. That is the opportunity. It is real. He's sitting right there on Piers Morgan's panel saying he thinks we are at the point of no return and the midterms are going to be a bloodbath. The question is whether anybody is listening closely enough to do something with it. Stay locked in. Stay informed. Stay in this fight because the cracks in this coalition are the opening, and the opening will not stay open forever. If this channel is helping you see it, clearly subscribe right now, share this video, and bring somebody into the conversation who needs to hear it. I am Lucas Stowe, and I will see you in the next one.